Well, the European Parliament voted on this piece of legislation yesterday. We'll get the result this morning, but it is almost certain that it will pass very comfortably. There's two main things to keep in mind about this legislation. One is that it's not just going to show your vaccination status, it will also show whether you've received a negative test result in the past days and whether you have ever been diagnosed with coronavirus before, therefore giving you antibodies. And EU countries, under this legislation that's been agreed, must allow in an EU citizen that has one of those three things. In other words, an EU country cannot block an EU citizen from entering if they haven't been vaccinated. It has to allow them to get a test and or quarantine and still come in. The other important thing to note is that this is a minimum requirement. So under this legislation, all EU countries must accept this vaccine passport. But they could let people in with other pieces of information, or they could not require anything for a citizen to come in. And this may become important because the passport will only recognize European Medicines Agency approved vaccines. That is Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, and Johnson & Johnson. Now, only one EU country has given a different vaccine that's been authorized by the EMA, that is Hungary. They've been giving out the Sputnik vaccine. That will not show up on this EU vaccine passport. However, countries would still be free to allow Hungarians who have been Sputnik vaccinated into their countries. There's nothing blocking that. This is basically a minimum criteria. The main design here is to reopen travel within the EU and get tourism going again.
A minimum criteria, Dave, that sounds though that each country can basically do its own thing on it. What exactly does this mean for people coming in from outside the EU?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in how they use the passport, it'll be up to individual countries, and that will especially apply for third countries, for people coming in from outside the EU. This legislation doesn't immediately impact people from coming outside the EU, but separately, they are trying to open to vaccinated tourists, particularly American tourists. They're trying to reach an understanding on that, because that cannot be set at EU level. When it comes to who you allow in from third countries, that is entirely a national issue. Now, the EU countries did coordinate a ban on all non-EU citizens a year ago. That's been in place for a year. So they're trying to coordinate the end of the ban, but it's exceedingly complicated because the United States and the UK don't have vaccine passports. In the US, they're issuing different kinds of just little slips of paper that are really just intended to show you what stage you're at in the vaccination process. That's what several countries are going to accept for Americans coming into Europe. So some countries have already started. The problem is those are obviously easily forgeable. So we're going to have a situation, it looks like, this summer where Americans that will have an easier time coming into Europe than Europeans, because Europeans will have to have this ultra-secure digital certificate to show they've been vaccinated, and Americans will just have to show an easily forgeable slip of paper. I've talked to some diplomats about this because this could cause a real backlash against the vaccine passport system. They say they're aware of the problem, but the issue is that certain countries are going to push for Americans to come in no matter what, and there's nothing the EU can do to stop them. So they're trying to have a coordinated approach on this. The idea is that eventually the EU vaccine passport scheme can recognize foreign given vaccinations, but given that those main foreign countries that they're looking for tourists from don't have vaccine passports and only have slips of paper, that's going to be complicated in the short term. They're hoping that by the end of the summer they have a more systematic approach to this.
Okay, Dave, for now, thanks very much indeed. Dave Keating there, our correspondent.